Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It is FPC Radio Live. It is January the 30th, 2023, and Super Bowl 57 is set. The Kansas City Chiefs will take on the Philadelphia Eagles in what should be a fairly good contest. You can argue the two best teams from their respective conferences all year. But John, before we get there, I just want to talk about a masterclass. And by that, I mean, I put on a masterclass yesterday, and let me explain. A masterclass in getting absolutely everything wrong. Because I picked the 49ers. I picked the Bengals. I put money on both. I bet the Bengals spread. And I just swung and missed on every single one of them yesterday. It was a very humbling experience.
Well, it does happen. I liked Philadelphia in the under, which I hit on, and then I liked Cincinnati in the over, and that game never really got going. I thought it'd be a bit more offensive than it was, and those two defenses are good, and they can make plays.
If you think about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then, when it was 2020, I was in Cincinnati, had some possessions, and I hated the play calling. They got on first down, they got a 7-yard run from Mixon, and then they decided to pass on 2nd and 3, which to me, to run, just kind of build up some momentum, and then Burrow throws that interception, which served as a punt, but it was still 3rd and 3. It's not a desperate situation. But those were tough games. The first game was almost unwatchable. It really was. The second game was much better. I don't think Cincinnati and Kansas City can play each other and not have an exciting game. This is 4 straight games they've played each other the last 2 years, and each game has been decided by a field goal.
Yeah, and that's kind of. Again, I mean, that's you expect it. I mean, I think we both picked 3-point wins. I mean, I picked it for Cincinnati, but the point is these teams are so evenly matched. And look, I want to say right off the bat, I know a lot of people are complaining about officiating. Look, there's no grand scheme. There's no conspiracy. Officiating is just at a low point. I mean, we see it every week. I much more bank on the fact that they're just not doing their job well enough, as opposed to some grand scheme to elevate specific teams or screw over specific teams. Because, John, it's incredible how each and every week, every single team gets screwed by the refs. It's actually impressive. It's amazing that the referees can have so many agendas going at once. No, look, the point is there's no specific conspiracy agenda or it's not rigged. I know rigged was trending on Twitter, which, is just silly at this point. It's kind of just that mob think mentality. Everyone's upset. Everyone's going to react. But that doesn't mean that calls weren't missed. And impactful calls were either not made or made that really impacted this game. And, I can point to that last play that set up the entire potential game-winning field goal, which Buckner hit. Look, the hit out of bounds, that's a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I don't care what time of the game it is. I don't care what the implications are. I don't care the situation. He hit him out of bounds. I mean, you can't make that stupid play and expect not to get flagged. Now, I know people are getting upset that, it was close. It was this, it was that. He was out of bounds. He was already running out. You don't even have to put a finger on him. Let him do that. And you're talking about a situation where you have 8 seconds left and you have a very long field goal, which if you saw the one that was actually made, that's not going to be able to go another 10 yards. That didn't clear that field goal by a wide. This wasn't, it was in from 45, but would have been good from 55. No, this was in at 45 and maybe good from 48, So, a dumb penalty, shouldn't have taken it. However, the officials missed a massive hold on that run that really sprung that play right up the middle. I mean, you got a guy that was about to get to Patrick Mahomes and a hold was committed. I mean, this isn't a bias. I mean, you see it right on camera. A hold was committed and it was missed. And that's, that's what the problem is with officiating, because it's far too inconsistent. You can even look to the non-roughing the passer penalty that wasn't called on Joe Burrow, where I believe it was Frank Clark he took 3 full steps after that ball was gone. I mean, there's no debate. This wasn't a bang play. There isn't any gray area, by the letter of the law, that's a roughing the passer play.
Mhm.
And that wasn't called. So do the Bengals fans have reason to gripe? Sure. But to your point, John, I mean, the reason they should be griping is the play calling and some of the situational football that, they kind of failed at yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I really had some problems with it. Like I said, I cited, I think, second to last drive. They've got the ball. The game's tied. You kind of felt that there was some momentum with Cincinnati because their defense was doing what their defense always does in the fourth quarter, which is play really well. And you get a 7-yard run by Joe Mixon, and I'm like, just run the ball. Maybe you wear down that defense to try to get Chris Jones out of his comfort zone because he was just a wrecking ball yesterday. He may have been the best player on the field. Instead, they throw an incompletion, and then Burrow throws that deep pass, which is intercepted, but it's not a desperation situation. And you give Kansas City the ball back. Just some play calling it was surprising. You want Burrow to get rid of the ball a little quicker. That offensive line has issues. His only weakness right now I see as a quarterback, and again, let's not forget he's only played 3 years, is he's got to feel the pressure a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think he'll get better at that. The intentional grounding call, to talk about that, here's the problem I have with intentional grounding, Ian. We do everything to protect the quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why the hell do we have intentional grounding then? Shouldn't that be like, okay, the quarterback's going to get nailed.
Well,
he's in a really tough situation. He gets rid of the ball. Peyton Manning had a lot of intentional groundings that weren't called over the years to preserve himself, right?
Yeah, but look, it's actually great that you brought this up because I know you can't see this part of it, but Joel actually asked that question. I was going to try to bring that up as soon as you were done, but you did it for me. So that's just how in sync we are, John. There's something in the
amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. I thought
it's like Burrow to Chase. I'm Jamar Chase. You're Joe Burrow. That sounds good.
I like the call.
Yeah,
I think it was fine because, honestly, when I saw the play happen live, that's the first thing I thought. I was like, he is throwing to no one. There's no one in that area, and very clearly, obviously, didn't get out of the tackle box, nor did he get it to the line of scrimmage. So to me, I was like, yeah, I was surprised that it hadn't been called yet. And then finally, the flag flew, and we, this is how sometimes these intentional grounding calls are made. The refs, they get together, they talk about it, which is fine. I mean, again, I don't have a problem with it. And to your point, I understand what you're saying. You're trying to protect the quarterback, but that's cheapening the game, because if that was the case, if it was free reign, then there would never be sacks. Then you would just throw the ball directly into the dirt in front of your feet, and you would live to play another day. And that's out of the spirit of the game, in my opinion. So I understand that. Yeah, there is a element of protecting the quarterbacks, but at that point, then just make it so they don't get hit. Just wrap them up and then blow the whistle or put a flag on them, because then you don't have to worry about throwing the ball in the dirt, and you can just take the quote unquote sack. But in that particular call, I thought it was fine. I mean, I know Samaje Perine was a little bit further up, but it wasn't close enough. So to me, I know Chiefs fans who think I'm the biggest Chiefs hater in the world are probably shocked that I'm agreeing with that call. But the reality of it was the right call. Just like I said, the out of bounds call was the right call. It was a dumb play by the Bengals defender to even put himself in that position. So blame the Cincinnati, not the officials. And in this case, like I said, that's an intentional grounding, and you can thank Cincinnati or what is it, the right tackle there, who completely whiffed on his assignment there in that situation that led to that. So yeah, I'm okay.
That offensive line. Yeah, they got to fix that offensive line. That's again for the second year in a row. Look, they made it to the Super Bowl last year, AFC Championship game this year. They lost both games 23-20. I think their offense is better than that. Button up that offensive line, and you may have the Super Bowl favorites for next year. But you're right. No, I understand your point too. It's just that I'm looking more bigger picture than just that specific play. It's like, you want to protect the quarterback, but then you have that call that is, blown quite often. But the other one was when they just gave Kansas City a mulligan. Remember they stopped them, and then they just decided to have another play. I was like, I thought I was watching the 1972 Summer Olympics with.
There was one camera shot that they showed where the official was running onto the field, but we still didn't really get an explanation as to why. I think they mentioned something about the clock was running when it shouldn't have been, but I don't I'd be upset too if I were Zach Taylor. And again, look, if you're looking to blame anything other than your team's performance, which generally is the case, I mean, that's what fans do. I mean, we're all guilty of it. It's very easy to point to officiating and point to situations like that where it's like, oh my God, it's sketchy. But if the whistle wasn't heard, and like I said, there was a camera angle showing the official running onto the field. Like, look, the play stopped. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's kind of a bad look. And again, this is gonna fuel all the fire conspiracy theorists, theories. But the reality of it is, I think it was just a situation where they couldn't hear the whistle, or at least it wasn't heard. And both teams were, under the same situation. So yeah, again, I mean, we can sit here and pretend like officiating was the problem or there was a conspiracy, but the reality of it was Kansas City executed when they needed to, and they took advantage of the situation. And that's really what it is. And that's what gets me so frustrated when people call teams or players lucky. It's not luck. It's taking advantage of a situation, because there is no guarantee in this game. Like, you could be handed a golden opportunity, John, and completely fail at it. So just because you're given that opportunity doesn't mean you're actually going to execute. And that's the biggest difference. And that's what kind of separates your kind of over the top emotional sports fan with, people that watch and follow the game and understand that, like, yeah, it's not about, you know what I mean? It's not so much like everything is made up about one moment or two moments or this or that. And it's such a bigger picture than that. There's so many other things that go into winning and losing these football games, but it's so easy to pinpoint one play or one call or whatever and kind of harp on that. And look, we do that positively too. We do that positively. Like, for example, John, the run by Patrick Mahomes, it was great. And, there's obviously the added element of the ankle injury. And I'm not going to get into that because I have my opinion. And right now I'm going to avoid giving that. But the reality of it was he didn't really have a great fourth quarter. I mean, it was very pedestrian, and quite frankly, this offense struggled when they started losing their wide receivers. And Cincinnati finally decided to put two people on Travis Kelce. Like, I mean, it's the same thing we used to see with Gronk all the time. Now, eventually, Gronk had 2 and 3 guys on him because they realized, well, you could absolutely hack a Shaq him, and he's not going to get, the pass interference call for him. So eventually that went away. But there were times where you're sitting there scratching your head like, how do you not cover Rob Gronkowski? Well, you're doing the same thing with Travis Kelce right now. How do you leave him wide open? And there were so many instances where he was wide open. Now, when those other guys started to go down, they actually focused on Travis Kelce. And what do you know, John? Again, that Chiefs offense looked pedestrian. And had it not been for a big return on the kickoff and then obviously the penalty, that's what, 50 yards right there, a 35, 40-yard kick return plus 15 yards on the penalty.
Set it up. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, we focus on one thing positively or negatively. And in this case, positively for Patrick Mahomes, the run, and that's all people are going to talk about. But the reality of it was Kansas City showed up to play. They made the big plays on defense. You mentioned Chris Jones. He made a big play. MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he showed up. And, again, you want to talk about the receivers going down, you still have Travis Kelce. And he showed up as well. So definitely a very well-executed game for the most part for Kansas City. Certainly better than Cincinnati, who I think kind of fumbled the bag a little bit.
And this is the 4th straight time when they've met that Cincinnati's fallen behind, right? And then they come back and win the game. At some point, have a better first quarter. Yeah, have a better first quarter. I mean, I almost felt like it was going to be a blowout at some point, but Burrow plays great situational football. Kansas City, settled for field goals rather than touchdowns. And next thing you know, it's 13-6 at the half. They tie it up at 13. They tie it up at 20. Now you've got a game, but get off to a better start. So I know you're not trailing throughout the entire game. That puts you in a difficult situation, less margin for error. The other thing, too, is on that Kelce touchdown, he was covered by a guy who was about 5'11". Like, I mean, I could have maybe completed that pass because, again, 4th down and 2, inside the, 10, 15-yard line, you've got to figure he's looking for Kelce, right? Like, why can't you just double him? If someone else gets open and beats you, God bless him, but Kelce obviously is playing at such a high level.
And it's not even player. Like he's covered. That's
no,
he
wasn't. The guy was just there. Yeah, the guy was just kind of, I think it was Hilton maybe, who's a fine player, but Kelce's 6'6", 260, and he's very athletic. I mean, he's very nimble out there. And he's a giant wide receiver. double them. Let someone else beat you. I'll be anxious to see what Philadelphia does in the Super Bowl if they try to, do something like that, because their defense is darn good too.
Yeah, and look, I mean that's something interesting. Obviously, we're going to really dive into later this week, and of course next week. But yeah, I mean, look, that's the frustrating thing. I mean, obviously, you have to give credit to the player, the coaching, and all that stuff for being able to do that. But at the same time, it's like every week, it's like, guys, why are you singling Travis Kelce? Why are you just leaving a under a slow linebacker or an undersized defensive back on him? It's silly. So.
Mhm.
Look, healthy or not, I don't think 49ers were winning that game yesterday. I was way off the mark when it came to that. And look, I mean, I know, again, Brock Purdy going down, that doesn't help. But I don't think that based on what we saw, there's no way the Eagles are losing that game. I overestimated, I think, San Francisco's ability, and I think I underestimated, not underestimated, because I've been high on the Eagles. We've both been all year, but I think the last month or so kind of fooled me a little bit, or maybe just distracted me from the fact that, yeah, this Eagles team is really good, and they really showed it and dominated. Like, forget about holding Brock Purdy and that offense and all that stuff to what they did. They put up 31 points against this 49ers defense. 31. That's the most impressive thing about it.
All while the quarterback didn't throw one accurate pass the entire game. Seriously, I thought Jalen Hurts was terrible throwing the football. He ran the ball effectively. They ran the ball effectively. San Francisco kind of shot itself in the foot. There was one drive when it was 7-7 where 3 defensive penalties extended the drive, so that hurt San Francisco. And then when San Francisco ran into the punter, that extended another drive. Next thing you know, it's 21-7. San Francisco, even with a healthy Purdy or Garoppolo or whoever, is not built to come from behind. They're built to play even or from ahead.
I know
right?
one guy.
Oh yeah, who's very comfortable playing from behind.
Yes, but we'll get into that later. That's a like I said. I mean, I was very wrong about everything this weekend, but and my personal interests certainly were not met this weekend. However, there is one silver lining in all this, and that's something we'll get into later probably tomorrow, because it'll be interesting, and I'm sure this will be weeks and weeks of talking about this one particular guy. But yeah, look, I mean, you're right. I mean, Jalen Hurts didn't have a strong game, but that kind of really speaks to what this team is. And look, I don't, the Hurts haters out there will sit there and point to, like, oh, see, he wasn't really. No, the guy's MVP tier. I mean, again, had he not got injured, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's is very easily or very appropriately could be getting ready to win his MVP trophy in just a couple weeks. So no, he is there. He just didn't have, like you said, a terribly great game. Aesthetically, at least when you look at it and you watch, like, yeah, obviously the numbers look solid, or at least the winning, but yeah, he was just a little off. But look, this team is good. This team is good. I mean, they have playmakers all over the field. Miles Sanders had 3 touchdowns yesterday. Obviously, AJ Brown it's AJ Brown, and that cat. Well, the non-catch by Devontae Smith. I mean, it was good for about 95% of the catch, and then it obviously wasn't. But hey, you take advantage of it and you move on. It still looked good, at least for a few minutes, until we actually saw the reality of it. So, yeah, this Eagles team was impressive, and they can be better.
The thing about Philadelphia, we've been talking about it all year, there's no team in the league that is as strong as they are on the offensive and defensive lines. And I know we love playmakers and quarterbacks, and they're so important. Quarterback's most important position in all of sports. But there are times where when your offensive line is that dominant, your defensive line is that dominant, you're just going to win, right? And then you throw in the fact that you got Jalen Hurts, who didn't have a really good game yesterday, but good enough. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, dynamic wide receiver tandem. You've got, like, it felt like 25 different running backs out there, and a good play caller in Nick Sirianni. So, yeah, they're going to be tough to beat. I mean, that offensive line is as good as I've seen, I'd say, since Dallas in the 90s, where they were just dominant. Again, you're talking about, they have 2 players on that offensive line who are trending to be Hall of Famers, right?
Yeah.
Jason Kelsey has been the best center in football for like the last 10 years. He's as good at his position as his brother is at his position. That's pretty cool, actually. Yeah. And then right tackle, I forget his name now for some reason, but he's sensational as well. That they're just a really, really good offensive line, and that they control the game from that point forward. So they're gonna be tough to beat.
Yeah, and look, I mean, this is the defensive line that in the middle of the season added a guy like Ndamukong Suh, who, trust me, I'm pretty sure the Buccaneers missed his presence, not only play-wise, but just the mentality, physicality, and kind of the leadership that he kind of brings to the table. So yeah, I mean, and that is something that I don't I'm not going to sit here I'm not going to sit here and say that there was no injury to Patrick Mahomes, but it's certainly been played up well beyond what I think the impact was. Let's put it that way. That's kind of a nice way to put it, right?
Well, it happens, yeah. I mean, with superstar players, again, everything gets blown out of proportion. The guy is the face of the league at this point, right? I mean, we've talked about Brady and Rodgers and all these other. He is the face of the league right now because he's. I mean, I was at a hockey game yesterday, believe it or not, youth hockey game, and a bunch of little kids were playing in the lobby. They were like 7, 8 years old, and like I asked them all, "Who's your favorite quarterback?" Like all of them said Patrick Mahomes, and I don't even know if they really follow football all that much, but that's who he is, right?
Oh, so sure.
Well,
see, my
you would have got angry. You would have said, "Why isn't Tom Brady?"
No. I understand. My response would be, let's wait until we see the jersey sales, because I would have said the same thing. And then last year, Tom Brady was still the number one selling jersey, which again outbeats all the players that were going to new teams, which almost seems impossiple at this point. So.
But a lot of those jerseys, those old guys that have expendable income, right? The 55-year-old guys.
half of those jerseys were just me buying different jerseys. So I had to inflate those numbers a little bit. But
I forgot that.
Yeah. But no, seriously though, I believe the guy's 45 going on 46. I mean, obviously Patrick Mahomes is a young star. I mean, we have a lot of young stars in this league. The guy with the most success. I mean, the funny thing is, John, if he goes out and wins the Super Bowl in a couple weeks, he will finally have matched what Tom Brady has done during the same time he's been in the league. People forget that because Tom Brady's won 2 Super Bowls since Patrick Mahomes has been in the league. Obviously beating him twice en route to get there. Once in the Super Bowl. So that's why I kind of, I tried to make the analogy last week on Friday talking about, how do we view Patrick Mahomes historically? And it has nothing to do with Tom Brady right now. That conversation should not even if they win a Super Bowl, that conversation should not be happening at this point. The logjam, the clumping up of all these great quarterbacks right now, when you're talking about like if you're going to have like a dot chart or something like that, you have one, obviously Tom, there's a couple others kind of scattered maybe behind him, the Joe Montanas, the Peyton Mannings. But for the most part, all your great quarterbacks, all your standard Hall of Fame quarterbacks are clumped together. Okay. He's going to fight his way through that crowd. That's what he's doing right now. And that's the best way I can say it. This isn't, if he goes out and wins the Super Bowl, he's not the GOAT. He's not on GOAT pace. There's no such thing in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a very valid opinion because, well, there is no benchmark. I mean, generally for you to become the greatest, you have to do more than the previous greatest. I mean, that's just common sense. How can you surpass someone by doing less? I don't know. But that's where we're at right now. For him, his personal legacy obviously can be helped tremendously. We talk about this with Aaron Rodgers all the time. Imagine if he had a second Super Bowl. Oh my God. Like think about where he would be versus where he is now. And look, either position is great, but you can't discount how big of a deal that second trophy is. The only problem is, and this is the issue that I have, and I think a lot of fans are having a tough time reconciling. As great as it is, it has nothing to do with Tom Brady and the GOAT yet. It's just, that's the reality of it. It's so far away from that, again, it's not even a discussion, but that's the problem that we're having though, John, is that we're not having the right discussion. We're having the inappropriate, over the top discussion that is never going to bring people together. It's just going to end up creating that divide even more. And then we have people, hating each other and all that stuff. So, yeah.
That's what happens. I mean, this would be akin to, let's say, Jason Tatum wins the league MVP, Celtics go on and win the championship, and all of a sudden people say, forget comparing him to Jordan. That's another stratosphere. But then now they're saying, well, he's going to surpass Kobe Bryant. And it's like, well, wait a second. Kobe Bryant's top 10 all-time leading scorer in the league and won 5 titles. Right? So that's exactly what we're at. I mean, Mahomes is on a really great pace, et cetera, but winning Super Bowls, you can't go by pace, right?
Yeah.
Because Dan Marino in his second year went to the Super Bowl. So you'd say, well, if he plays 14 years, he's going to play in 7 of them. He never returned to the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers won a Super Bowl in his 3rd year as a starter. You'd say, okay, if he plays 15 years, he'll get to 5, maybe win 3 or 4. He's never been back. It's not that easy. Look at the game yesterday. A play here or there, it's Joe Burrow going back to the Super Bowl, not Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
That's why that Philadelphia team's been really impressive, Ian, when you think of it. 14-1 during the regular season with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, and their 2 playoff wins, not necessarily perfect in terms of performance, but 38-7 and 31-7. I mean, if they do the same type of thing against Kansas City, we may have to start talking about the Eagles, this year's Eagles, as a team that was pretty darn dominant, right? I mean, if you go through and win 3 postseason games by multiple scores and go 14-1 with your starting quarterback during the regular season, that's pretty good.
And it would be yet another team that has more Super Bowls than Patrick Mahomes since he's been in the league.
So if you go back to 2017.
Which again, kind of puts a lot of this stuff in perspective. Like, this like over the top, like he is him. Oh my God, he's the greatest. Like we're getting the same stupid, Tom's the greatest, but Patrick is the best. No, greatest and best mean the exact same thing.
Yes.
It's silly to try to separate those two because it makes you look foolish. I'm sorry, that it is what it is. And people will sit there and try to say, well, no, greatest means accomplishment and best means, and then they'll list all these unprovable cliche qualities, he makes any throw, he makes more throws than Tom does. And it's like, no. That's not an argument. That's just you living off hyperbole and cliche. That's essentially what it is, because it's not really rooted in truth. It's rooted in narrative. And that's fine. I mean, that's what the nature of the business is now. That's what we see each and every week. So, I'm not surprised, but it's just I just wish we could have more appropriate conversations about his historical accomplishments, because I think it is a great conversation. And I think there is a lot of things to talk about in terms of like what he's accomplishing, but we're not, most people aren't capable of doing it. It's either, well, he's already the best, or he's the most talented this, no, he's not. But we can have a conversation about his greatness that is certainly appropriate, and maybe in time, John, that will happen, but I can't imagine that will be the case.
Don't we do this with quarterbacks more than any other position in any sport, right? Because with quarterbacks, it's either they're incredible, they're in the debate of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, or they're horrible. And there's like no middle ground, which is unfortunate. Even a guy like Justin Herbert, who's only played 3 years, I think he's building a nice career for himself. He doesn't have a playoff win yet, but, a lot of guys went through their first 3 years without getting a playoff win. It's not an either or type of thing. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are in the middle ground, that are really good quarterbacks that could have a run. Just look at Joe Flacco in 2012. That's probably the most extreme case. But yeah, this happens with quarterbacks. It's like, Tony Romo doesn't help matters either, because he's just so. I'm so happy that CBS is not doing the Super Bowl. Like I've talked about Greg Olson for the last few years. He's darn good. He really is. I mean, as a football, I really like him.
Is he really good, or is the surrounding competition so bad?
Yeah, that's true. Right? Yeah, because
I've noticed that, because I was like, you know what? Not everyone, like there are times where like I made a comment last week too that I really enjoyed Greg Olson, but then I started to think about it. And I'm like, I think he's pretty good, but I think people think he's really good because of what we're seeing around us, and I'm just like, oh my God! And look, if I will be so happy, and I know this won't be the case, because they're gonna well, I don't know, we'll see, but they're probably gonna play it over and over again during the Super Bowl. But I don't ever want to see that Tony Romo Caddyshack commercial again.
Oh God!
Oh my God! That was just don't ruin that for me, please. I'd rather find out Bill Murray like slaughtered like cows for fun, and find something like horrible like that out about him, and still be able to. I don't want to associate that commercial. I don't know why I went with slaughtered cows. I think I didn't want to say babies or people or anything like that, because then I'm just going off the rails. But you get my point. I'd rather something more horrible. I could much more stomach watching that movie if something like horrible happened outside of it, as opposed to having associate Tony Romo with that awful recreation of that scene. I can't do it.
Yeah, I don't get him. I really don't. I mean, I honestly, he's really good in one aspect. The 2-minute drills, he's really good at. And again, he played quarterback at a really high level. He was a really good quarterback. So I think he's good at that type of stuff. But the rest of the time, it just sounds like he's passing a kidney stone, or he's not even taking a stand. What do you think, Jim? Well, you're the guy that's supposed to analyze. Jim is setting you up. It's not the other way around.
My favorite part, I wish I can remember the specific. There's one play where they went to Mike Pereira, and Tony Romo was talking about, I don't think this is it. And Mike Pereira was like, no, you're wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, man, I wish I made a mental note, but clearly that wasn't enough. I should have made a physical note. I was like, I got to remember that. No, there was a specific play where Tony I think he was trying to create some sort of doubt in the accuracy of the call. And Mike Pereira was like, no, that was the right call. Oh, you know what it was? It might have been the intentional grounding, actually. Or, yeah, I think it was, because he started, he was like, well, no. He's like, no, that was the right call. He didn't get out, or didn't do this, or didn't do that. Yep. Either way, I noted that, and I had a nice little chuckle. So maybe I can go back and find that. But then again, that would involve having to go back and listen to Tony Romo again. I don't know if it's worth it. So, all right. That's going to do it for us here today. We will be back tomorrow. And, of course, we're going to really start gearing up and start looking forward to the Super Bowl. And then, of course, everything else that goes along with the offseason. And, of course, the NBA and NHL. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we will talk to you tomorrow.